Emiliano Ruprah. Did I get that right?
You sure did.
Awesome. Awesome. Welcome to the show, Emiliano. And you're a filmmaker, director, multimedia journalist based out of DC. But we were talking a little bit offline. You're actually in Mexico City right now.
Yeah, Glenn. So I just came back from Chiapas, which is in the south of Mexico. It's a place with a lot of cloud forests and kind of like a lot of ancient indigenous cultures. It's one of the areas in Mexico where there's a lot of wildlife still kind of left intact. So I spent a couple weeks with a biologist tracking jaguars. So
Jaguars.
Yeah, it's been a fun couple weeks.
Are you wearing like shin guards and arm guards and neck guards, like pads and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, not really. Not a lot of protection. Basically, you want to wear as little as possible and cover yourself in as much like animal shit as possible so that you don't smell human when you're tracking jaguars.
Okay.
So yeah, you go pretty bare bones, and it's just rainy. So you have to, it's a nightmare. You've got to protect yourself a bit from the rain, but there's really no way to stay dry for 2 weeks when it's constantly raining. So it's just, you just got to haul it,
Constantly raining, covered in shit. Jaguars. You must truly love the craft, man. So Emiliano, filmmaker, multimedia journalist. So I guess during the quarantine, I mean, what have you been up to? And besides, obviously you mentioned you're in Chiapas.
Chiapas, yep.
Yeah, Chiapas.
Chiapas is a state in the south of Mexico.
So how would you say you've been impacted by the quarantine, say, the last 6 months? I mean, has that, clearly you've been back on set, around this time now. I've been doing this podcast maybe 6 months, and now I'm starting to, see, hey, checking with my guests, have you been back on set? And that's great, you've been back on set. But I'd say in the last 6 months, how have you been impacted by the quarantine, current state of affairs?
Yes. Yeah, so it was pretty tough. This year was kind of a big year for me. I just finished my first feature film, which was Nomads. Is a kind of a film about migratory species I shot all over Mexico. It was, I was going to do the festival circuit and then the theatrical run. And at the same time, I was going to begin the second season of a TV show I was co-hosting with a friend, an adventure series for Discovery Science Channel. And both of those things got put on pause, man, So the first 3 months were, they were really, really, really tough. Time for introspection and figuring out what to do with a restless, creative mind, as you well know. Yeah. So man, I hit the books hard, I hit the exercise hard, and I just kind of started just developing ideas, dreaming up future scenarios,
Yeah.
Until I could travel. So luckily I have a couple passports, which allowed me to pursue a couple of those ideas, At some point, I was just too restless, and I got on a plane and kind of went for it.
What's the Discovery travel? You mentioned Discovery travel project.
So last year, I co-hosted a TV series with a really good friend of mine, an explorer by the name of Justin Fornell, and basically it's an 8-episode series on Science Channel, so it's part of the Discovery brand. Yeah, and it's basically about us to uncovering historical mysteries kind of around the globe. So we shot, in a lot of places in the U.S., then Ethiopia, Egypt, Northern Africa. And yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. It's kind of like a lot of history, a lot of archaeology, a lot of kind of forbidden or alternative history and archaeology as well. And yeah, that's been put on. It did well. It was fun. It was interesting, educational, and we're going to do a second season. But of course, international, because it involves so much international travel, it's been put on pause, and we're waiting to see what'll happen.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, that's been like you know, that's been the state of affairs for a lot of folks. And like you said, you know, the last 6 months I was doing a lot of prep, a lot of writing. You know, editing little passion projects that, you know, I just knocked out all these little things that I had in the can and put those out. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty frustrating, I'd say, the last, maybe not for me. Obviously, you know, I love set life, and you know, acting or, you know, crew work on a TV film project, you know, whatever production. Now, set life, I live for set life. But at the same time, I think this gave me a great opportunity to explore, you know, teleworking and this studio and kind of delve into this podcast and just reach out to other artists and share ideas. And I definitely took advantage of this quarantine and this downtime and live streaming technology, and, you know, kind of like this whole telework thing, and just you know, jumped into that in such a way that make it work for, you know, not only myself, but other people to get their, you know, get their stuff out, you know, stuff that they just finished or stuff that they're just now starting to pick up on. So, yeah, I mean,
I think that's so important, man. That's so important, you know, because for people like you and I who are just creative and restless, you know, you can either take that energy and be really destructive, as a lot of us tend to be when we don't have an outlet, or you can build. And, you know, you just need to kind of shift the paradigm and realize you could build under any circumstance, and just rethink about what to build, how to build it, and how to build something that's not just helpful for you, but really, I mean, I think the reason we're in film and in a medium that's meant to communicate as universally as possible is because we care about connection with others, right? Which has been a really tough thing to figure out during this pandemic. But this is certainly one of the great ways to do it, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's an age old saying, you know, something blessing in disguise. And it's actually, you know, this was a blessing in disguise. You know, there was actually, you know, a bright side to this. There was a blessing in disguise in this and that and the other thing. And it's almost a matter of seeking out those blessings. I mean, what's the best, you know, way to take this quarantine, or take this broken leg, or take this there was one time I got second degree burns. I think in 2018 I got some second degree burns on my right leg, and I told at the time she was my girlfriend, and I was planning on proposing later on that month, and I still did. We still went on this trip that we all planned, and then I was planning, you know, this proposal there. But when I was in the hospital, I just said, "Hey, babe, all I need you to do before you come visit me, I need you to grab my laptop and the charger. That's all I need, is that MacBook Pro and the charger." And I was on that thing, writing, prepping, shot listing, outlining the whole time. I don't even think I paid attention to the TV. I might have had like some YouTube on with my headphones. I think I went through like 3 different roommates in this hospital bedroom that I was in, and never knew it. You know, I might have seen him and waved, and I saw him leaving and I waved, and it was finally my time to go. But I had my laptop the whole time, and I was answering calls, answering texts, of course, and reaching out to those. But I made, what's the bright side to this? What is there an opportunity to take advantage of this? Hey, this is downtime. This is like a forced vacation or a paid vacation, you know? And so as far as the quarantine goes, plus we had a kid, I think a week or 2 before the whole government said shelter in place. So that's, you know, yeah, it was a bit frustrating, to say the least, but you know, we were determined to make the best of it, and aside from that, there was a bunch of little ways I could get away with, you know, having him in the little bassinet next to me editing, and, and that sort of
Right,
thing.
right, right.
And I was like, oh no, I got them all
Yeah,
night,
he's
babe.
especially on the bad side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got them all night. I'll take care of all the nighttime
Yeah.
feedings. This, you know, this was when like it was 1 or 2 months old, so it was bottle feeds every 2.5 hours on the dot. So I was like, oh, I got all the nighttime feeds,
Right.
and, you know, and then hang out with him and then edit, and hang out with him or write. Once I got done editing, then I'm like, okay, let's work out a different schedule, you know. So, but
yeah, man.
Yeah.
What do you think about? I've been thinking about, because I'm getting to the age where, like, you know, girlfriend's is asking me the question about kids, you know, and what do you think? I mean, how do you feel about the future? You know, with this kind of, you know, seeing pandemics like this, seeing the mass extinctions happening.
Yeah.
Seeing the fact that the kind of like the political will to make massive change around the world is kind of at a standstill, just because everybody's so separated, interests are so varied. Just doesn't seem like we can organize like a kind of a global front to beat this stuff. How do you feel? Does it leave you in a state of desperation? Do you feel like it's his generation who's gonna, or her generation who's gonna take this stuff on, or do you feel responsible? How do you feel as a new father, seeing this kind of all this really large global conflict happening?
Well, as far as large global conflict, I don't see it so much as a major conflict. Now, each country, you know, each country has its own things. I know now, yeah, I know the US is having, you know, these indifferences with, say, Russia, North Korea, China, whatever the case may be, but I don't see that being a factor for me to not have a kid or worry about my kid's future. Listen, I mean, at the end of the day, I could always move to a whole different country,
Right.
Pack up and just, you know, go to an entirely different country. You know, at the end, if it really came down to that, this conflicts are temporary, pandemics are temporary. I mean, history has shown us that.
Yeah.
Listen, I mean, you know, Russia might disagree with our stance on things, and we might disagree with China's stance on things, but, you know, China, no country really, with the exception, you know, there might have been 2 or 3 times in the last 200, 300 years. No country really wants to wipe out another country or get wiped out. So there's always going to be a resolution. There's always going to be a resolution. There's always going to be some sort of treaty. There's always going to be an end to whatever conflict or struggle. There's you know, just about everything's temporary. So as far as, I mean, my advice to you, if you want to have a kid, there's nothing wrong with looking into other countries' living situations or other states in the US living situations or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Does your life and what you're doing substantiate a kid? Because, you know, for 40 years, well, you or anybody in general, you know, does you know, the parents, does the work situation, the living situation, you know, what it is you're setting out to do first? Is it time? Is it still time to wait, or is it time to, like, you know, settle down, get married, have kids? You know, you don't have to get married to have kids. I mean, whatever someone wants to do in life. But, you know, for 40 years, I wasn't ready to have a kid and get married, and it was, you know, work, and then I started to pull the trigger on the full-time freelance, building my production company, building my, you know, for lack of a better phrase, I know everybody says building my brand, you know, building my individual, building my name as a professional, you know, building myself as a professional, building my production company as a brand, and networking, and at one point it was like, okay, the acting and the crew work is pretty steady. I'm living comfortably. I'm living very comfortably, working for myself, being my own, you know, business or freelance, you know, entity, if you will. And then, you know, I was swiping on Tinder, you know, said, hey, I'll meet you at a bar. And then You never know when it's going to happen. The second, her eyes lit up when I walked in the room.
Right.
The second her eyes lit up, I said, shit, I'm going to end up marrying this girl. And I did. And but that's where compromise comes in, because she has a totally different career. But she says,
right.
I do want to get married. I do want to get married and have kids before it's too late. I'm in love with you. You're in love with me. And it's like, okay, here's what I do for a living. And she goes, that's understood. And here's what she does for a living. Okay, that's understood. So got married, had kids. But the second we started dating, somehow, and me and a number of previous guests always talk about blessings in disguise. We're blessed. And still, I'm trying to figure out where this one blessing started for me to have some sort of hindsight. Okay, I always want to do a podcast. I always want to do a bunch of stuff from the studio basement. Have cameras and a studio and a small little, switcher board, director board. I was, following YouTube for 10 years and seeing how people just started live streaming this, live streaming that. And so I was always working on having like a voiceover booth in the basement and a small little green screen and a white screen, and then this backdrop for this podcast, and start setting that up, and cameras here and cameras there, and always started slowly building and working on having this turnkey functioning micro studio in the basement, so that I could do a whole bunch of independent stuff down here and be hands-on with the wife and kid, nonstop, hands-on with the wife and kid. Obviously, always want to go on set. Always want to travel and shoot this, or travel and act in this, direct that, AD this, set life. I love set life, but I always wanted something kind of like this micro indie production suite in the basement. And thank God I did that, because now this is my main source of income for a number of different projects, a lot of corporate industrial stuff, some indie stuff, some freelance stuff. This podcast, hopefully this podcast gets kicked into overdrive somehow. And nonstop hands-on. And so the best way I can put it is, for example, with previous guests, we always talk about like, what's a fallback? Actors always have a fallback as like realtors or car salesmen. If you have a fallback, you're gonna fall back on that. And a lot of the most successful people, Dwayne the Rock Johnson kind of talked about it, but Schwarzenegger is famous for saying no plan B ever. His plan A was become a bodybuilder. I totally agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm. His plan A is only plan. More. Yeah. And there's a little delay, so I'm sorry if I keep interrupting you. There's a little bit of delay, but go ahead. Schwarzenegger's only one plan.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I mean that's the way I've always played it. I started making films relatively late in life. Maybe 26, and I hadn't picked up a camera till I was 25. Mm-hmm. I was on a completely different career path. I always wanted to make films. I just didn't think it was possible. I thought it just never crossed my mind that it was something achievable or doable for somebody who wasn't in some rarefied sphere, or who somehow lived and was born in Hollywood, or I don't know. I just didn't understand it. I didn't know how wide ranging it was, or what the possibilities were. And I had several friends, man, like after college, all working shitty jobs, really not enjoying our lives. And a bunch of us were like, all right, dude, let's just make films. That's what we always talk about. That's what we've always wanted to do, whether it's actors or directors or producers. We all wanted to be involved in the process of making films, and yet we didn't know how to do it. And I think I'm the only one out of this group of friends who stuck to it, and I stuck to it because I didn't have a plan B. Now, a lot of them had great plan Bs. Some of them made a lot of money, were very successful in material terms, but they're still now in their 40s dreaming about how to switching into a film career. And you can do the stuff, I guess, at any point, but it takes years to understand it, years of struggling, of doing things really poorly, of having great mentors teach you, of failing constantly, before you get to the point where you can actually make anything meaningful. It's
Yep.
one of the hardest art forms. It's just so impossible on, I think, in part because you have to deal with so many people. You have to learn so many different aspects, and that goes on top of all the studying and observing the masters, as it were, right? That I think the only way to achieve, kind of any level of success in film or TV or anything to do with this visual medium is knowing that you've only got one direction, and that's forward, right?
Right.
That there's nothing that's gonna catch you if you fall. You're gonna have to pick yourself up and you have to keep going. And that failure really isn't an option. It's a state of mind, and it's only one of two possibilities. So absolutely, I mean, if you're gonna do film, it's not only that your heart's got to be in it, but your whole being and your whole future's got to rely on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely agree. And unfortunately, it doesn't get any easier.
Yeah.
Right. If you have big dreams of doing something unique, something yours, you can always survive in film once you get pretty good, but you're always going to struggle to get that project out. Doesn't matter who you are in the industry. Your passion project is always going to be tough, and you got to treat it all the same, with the same kind of relentless passion that you did, getting into this industry in the first place.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Makes
Absolutely,
total sense to me.
I mean, again, Schwarzenegger said no plan B. He was hell bent on doing one thing, bodybuilding, to make him famous enough. Just like because his idol was God, I can't remember his name, but he played Hercules in the 50s. He was a bodybuilder turned actor, and so Schwarzenegger's plan was to emulate that exact career, because that's exactly what he wanted to do: become a bodybuilder, start getting into movies. And now he's Schwarzenegger. He had no plan B. Now for me, I'm thinking a little bit more realistically, but all my fallbacks and all my plan Bs, plan Cs, plan Ds still fall within audio, video, film and TV, live stream, editing remotely, whatever the case may be. And I had all these other, I'm a decent editor. I'm a decent shooter. I know live stream tech. I'm now looking into a little bit of the Unreal Engine, for animation and CGI stuff. And I'm trying to experiment with that and see what I can pull off of that. But all my fallbacks. So I said, it's okay. Now it's okay to have a fallback if you're falling back still within that realm. Of course, I want to be, my end goal is to write and direct, big budget Hollywood films, maybe act in them. Sure.
Right.
I was back in 2014. I have military experience. And so I decided to start acting, and I looked at, I have no acting experience whatsoever. Yeah. But my acting school was my military background. And so let's think about this.
Right.
The crew gigs are few and far between. So let's start adding some AV work. So because, years prior, you would see a bunch of crew gigs and they're looking for, sound and video professionals, and they word it special. They word it very slick. And then you show up and it's like you're hanging speakers, you're hanging lights, you're hanging screens and projectors for these conferences, these live events, maybe some concerts. And I'm like, this is not what I want to do. But it's better than working at a car dealership, or it's better, in my opinion. No offense to car dealerships or banks. Getting a job at getting a job cutting trees. I need to work in film and TV. So having that experience with AV work, and then maybe pick up some acting gigs and just submit to detective this, officer that, sergeant this, lieutenant that, major this, whatever. Law enforcement, military roles. That was my acting career. I had experience directing, ADing, production managing, doing sound on film, camera opping on films. So I know what the crew wants from an actor, especially I know what a director and a producer wants from an actor. So I'm able to flip flop and make things move smoothly. But as far as acting goes, like I know where my strengths lie, and that's law enforcement, military roles. So 1 year it was nothing but acting, but I started networking with that within that, and then I started getting crew gigs. Another year it was mostly crew gigs and some AV stuff, and then through that AV stuff I started learning, signal flow, video and audio signal flow, and mics. But then as an actor and as a filmmaker, I'm thinking I kind of want to have this home set up. Well, I can do voiceover work. Maybe I can get some voiceover gigs. So I started setting up this small studio. And then through the AV stuff, I started getting the live streaming. So instead of going there and hanging the lights, I would live stream that event. Instead of setting it up before the event and striking it after the event, I'm there at the event, running a small camera, live streaming it to this company that's having a conference for whatever reason. Microsoft at the convention. Microsoft is at the convention center downtown for 5 days. So a couple of small cameras, have that jack to streaming software, stream it to their website or stream it to YouTube, whatever. Wow, okay, this is how podcasts are done, essentially. Maybe set that up in the studio,
Right.
and like it's like fallback within fallback within fallback. But the end of the day, it's audio, it's video, it's film and TV. Whether I'm in front of the camera, behind the camera, whether it's at home or whether it's on set, whether it's remote telework, live stream, whether it's on location, traveling or staying home doing that, everything is falling back or falling forward into film and TV, essentially. That huge umbrella of, so there's two different ways around it. I'm only going to be an actor. I'm destined to win an Oscar and be famous and be on posters. Okay, there is no plan B. There is no fallback. Just act, act, act. Audition, audition, audition. And
I think that's if you're a person who's really curious about the whole art form, I think there's a lot that you can do in film, being open to different positions. I think the hardest thing in about kind of succeeding in this industry, at least just enough to make a living, I don't mean winning Oscars and stuff, is to be really humble,
mm-hmm.
Because it all seems kind of easy when you're on the outside. You're like, oh yeah, holding a camera, pulling focus, recording audio, whatever, saying a few lines in front of camera. But what you realize is that all of this stuff at a professional level is not easy. It takes knowledge. And then one of the hardest things is kind of managing the amount of people that you have to deal with to collaborate properly. That's, I think, what makes this one of the hardest industries on the planet, is that it's all based on trying to get one singular vision out of a number of people working together with different personalities, different desires, different ambitions. And almost always there's nobody on crew, right? Or on the acting stage who's where they want to be, right? 100%. AC wants to be DP. DP maybe wants to do something else. Everybody's in a constant movement because we all take the jobs that we can get at that point in time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's really tough, but you should be. The more open you are to doing everything, the more you're going to learn, the better you're going to be as a general filmmaker. But yeah, I think at some point, one of the greatest things you can have is a mentor, somebody who's willing to share years and years and years of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, learning how to do something really well.
Yeah.
Is exceptional at their craft. And for some reason sees in you something she or he sees in themselves, that's willing to share that knowledge. I think that's how great filmmakers are made. Learning from others,
Yeah.
I'm the same way as you, man. Like I went into this thing dreaming of making, the traditional fiction films, but I was in DC, and DC doesn't really have a large commercial narrative filmmaking industry. There are films being made every once in a while, but it's not the industry. So I started doing docs.
And most of those films are visiting to get their exterior shots, and then they go back to like Atlanta or New Mexico or New York or LA and get their lot and get everything shot in a lot. You know, most times, but anyway. But yeah, no, I get
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And nowadays with the technology, you don't even need to get those exterior shots. I mean, it's just everything's so digital and everything's so fabricated now.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, look, you know, by following the roads that were available, which is basically Discovery, National Geographic. At some point, it was Travel Channel, the scripts. I ended up doing, you know, unscripted, learning how to make both reality TV and then eventually wildlife documentary filmmaking. I fell into, you know, falling in love with being a nature cameraman, a nature director, a nature writer, which took me into exploring really strange and wild places with other people making films about conservation, ends of the earth stories, animals, wildlife, all of this stuff, which led me to kind of co-hosting a TV show just because I was doing a lot of like behind the scenes stuff, which a production company saw, and they said, look, you'd be great on camera with this other guy who was already a friend anyways. So yeah, it all ends up, if you work really hard, it ends up kind of like the universe ends up providing you with opportunities. You just have to be super willing to take them. And trust me, I'm not in front of the camera guy. I never wanted to be. Zero. But I realized that, you know, in film, you take the opportunities that are given. You don't know when you'll get them again, and you don't know what'll come of them. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you've raised a good point. You know, you want to learn, you want to do more and learn more, especially having a mentor. I have, you know, I've been acting, and it's funny you mentioned. So in the DC area, there are maybe 3 different production companies that produce all those ID crime shows, and so that's where I got a majority of my acting gig as detective this, and it's mostly, you know, it's mostly in those dramatic reenactments. But you know, based on the production, it might be full on scenes with dialogue and you know, like I'm grilling the guy, you know, tell me what you did, da, da, da. And then some of them are a little bit more artistic and obscure. They might blur it out, and there's no real dialogue. But I mean, acting's acting, and set life is set life, and 9 times out of 10 it pays well. And it's really cool stuff you can put on your reel, build yourself as an actor. But yeah, it's I've worked with a lot of actors like just starting off, and they were extras, and they were like, man, how do I get more acting work? And you know, I go to acting classes, but really, like, you know, you learn on set. And I'm like, bro, listen, right now you're an extra, but you know, you keep plugging at it, you're going to be featured, and then you're going to be supporting and stuff like that. But you want to make this a profession, here's a way to fill in your schedule. Start applying to be a PA, start applying to be a boom op, start, but mostly just start with PA work and start working behind the camera, working as a crew on a film. Never forget that you want to be an actor, and always apply and audition first. But if you're seeing this huge empty block and need to make some money, you could either drive an Uber, you could, you know, do Grubhub, you could Uber drive, or start applying to PA gigs. You know, they're probably paying just as well, if not a little bit better, than these little extra roles on these smaller shows. But you could be a PA on a bigger show, and you'll watch. You know, don't interfere and don't be a nuisance, but you can watch what the director is looking for from his actors, and in that way, you could learn what a director wants. And then when you go back to being, when you go to your next acting gig and the director's like, here's what I want, you got a better idea of how to pull that off as an actor. You know, seeing production from both sides. And that's what I tell a lot of up and coming actors, you know, pick up some PA work. Yeah, but man, I don't want to just get coffee for people all day. I'm like, you're not going to just get coffee for people all day. You're going to run around and, like, you know, hang some set dressings. You're going to run around and lay, you know, put layout board to protect, the floor, or you might bubble wrap railings so that the railings aren't banged up. But you're gonna see how the production is run, and you might get an opportunity. And I was a PA on National Treasure 2 for about a week. There was one solid day where we just sat there and we watched John Turtletop directing this entire scene, and I learned a lot. And
amazing.
Yeah,
amazing. That's such a privilege. I think a lot of people think like you just show, like cameramen, DPs, directors just show up one day and they're just directors, or it's like they were like people go to school and they're trained and then all of a sudden they're that, and that's just not the case.
Yeah.
The PA role is really interesting because, for one, it's such an essential role, because there's always unpredictables on set, right? And these unpredictables are always in the hands of the PA. So the PA becomes this glue that holds everything together. And a good PA that is not just carrying coffee, kind of with a sad look on their face, wishing they were doing a more important job, but is actually enjoying every minute of it because they realize how important they are, right?
Yeah.
And how mobile they are within the whole set. If you're a DP and you're walking into the costume department, you're gonna get asked questions. If you're a PA, you can walk through any department at any time because you're probably tasked with something important and essential, as small as it may be, to keep the production running. You're like the keystone, holding this whole structure together. And then the other thing that's interesting about PAs is really the PA job is like the job interview for the whole film industry. If you think of the film industry as a job, the PA position is the interview to get the job. Because film is not about PhDs. It's kind of a blue collar style work, right? It's really all based on how much blood, sweat, and tears you throw into this thing. And then from there, what natural skills and abilities you develop throughout the years, and you'll be naturally placed. So the PA, it's like, are you willing to work hard enough to survive this super difficult, unforgiving industry, right? And if you are, then welcome. If you're not, goodbye, this is not for you, right? So I love the PA job because you get to see who is gonna actually make an impact and who is gonna actually one day end up directing, field producing, DPing, doing whatever they want because they have that attitude where they're humbled by the experience and they're working hard through it. I love to see PAs work hard, man. You can tell they're going to do great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you can survive a PA job, you can work and callous yourself up and get even tougher to be a director or an AD. I mean, Christ, I've done a lot of AD works, man. And there's nights I can't even stand on my feet anymore as an AD. And so and the military really helped me with that. I mean, and I don't even want to get off into like, oh, hey, join the military or join the reserves, the guard, and that'll help you out. I don't even want to like go off on that tangent. I have, and that's not I'm not really pushing that right now. What I'm pushing is you have to see both sides. And so there's actors. I mean, I've been an extra and I just sat there like all day for 12 hours. I might have been pulled on set, for an hour here and an hour there, within a whole 12-hour day. And we just sat in, what do they call that? The cattle car or whatever it's called, like we were all just herded in
right.
little, cattle area as like, like sheep, like cattle, like cows. And we're just sit there and then we get dragged out. And we just sit there for hours. And if you can pull that off, you can be a PA, because if you're a PA, you're doing something nonstop for 12 hours. I've been a PA, and those days went by quick. And I was, and whatever my assignment was. And so as you progress, things start becoming done more in prep. Obviously
Mhm.
You know, a great director will have prepped and then like backup prepped and then backup prepped. And so I was able to see that on National Treasure too. You know, they didn't do like rehearsal shots. They did a couple of stand-in tests, and then they brought in, you know, Nicolas Cage and Diane Kruger, and it was like they knew their lines. The director probably worked with them for hours offset days before.
Right.
You know, he trusts they know the lines because they did all this prep. They did all this rehearsal and all this prep. And then it's like, okay, action. They go through the whole scene and it's like, okay, moving on. Then there was a time he was dealing with extras where, you know, something crashed through a glass ceiling and these feds are like trying to duck out of the way. He had to do take after take after take because he just chose to grab somebody. You're going to be the main guy that I'm looking at in this shot. You're going to be the main guy. And the guy biffed it a couple of times and then nailed it on the last one. And that's where that director's experience with, okay, adjust fire and adapt.
Mhm.
All right, let's move the camera a little bit. And then you just do this. And then let's take another shot and another take from another angle to match up. Because I wanted one thing. Clearly, I'm not going to get it. We're running late. Hey, listen, I could actually do 2 quick shots instead of doing like this, you know, masterful, amazing one take shot. Let me just do two angles.
Right.
I know we can match cut it and move on. So, and I saw the patience. I could tell he was getting a little frustrated, but he was holding it back. And that's that discipline and patience, professionalism, and just it's a tough job. And you know, he doesn't let it get to him. So
tough.
Yeah. So
The other thing,
no, you're saying?
yeah, sorry. The other thing that's tough about it, man, is like, you know, you're dealing with new people every time, right? So it's like, and these people are not necessarily trying to keep their job for life. So you got all kinds of people with all kinds of attitudes, right? I mean, sometimes you get really difficult people, man. I remember I was like, my first fiction film, I did a short virtual reality film once. It was like a crazy, like a VR heist film, whatever. And, you know, it was really complicated because I had like 40 extras and theatrical weapons, you know, that really shot out brass. And it was just so intense. And there was this guy who just kept fucking ripping farts, man, like in the middle, but like just really loud, obnoxious. Like I thought maybe he had some kind of problem, you know, like some stomach problem or something. And this guy ended up just being somebody who was fed up, and he was just a weird kind of extra bizarro person who just wanted to like rip the production down, you know. And this is a funky example, kind of a fun, strange example, but you find all kinds of people on sets, all kinds of personalities, all kinds of people with different levels of mental health issues at times, right? I mean, film attracts everyone. So you don't just have really solid working professionals, you have amateurs, you have people who don't know what they're doing, you have people with strange attitudes, right? And you have to navigate this stuff professionally, which makes the job so much harder than almost any other job, because other jobs, whether you're based in an office or elsewhere, you're dealing with a group of people for a significant amount of time, you know, and they all want to keep their jobs. While in film, it could be like, yeah, my job is to just be here today or to be here this week. So they don't necessarily put on their best face, you know, in times of adversity or conflict.
Yeah.
And it's a bizarre industry.
You're absolutely right. And, you know, you got people that are like, I don't really care about this one. This is just like a paycheck for one day. But for me, whether it's 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month, it's like, yeah, but you're dragging your name in the mud. You're not going to get called back for another thing. Someone's going to say something to somebody, and you're going to get a red X next to your name on all these agents, all these casting directors, casting coordinators, whatever they're called, whatever state you're in or whatever country you're in, you're going to get that, you're going to get blacklisted. You're going to get red X'd, man. And so what, huh? Am I back? But yeah, you're going to get your name dragged in the mud. And, you know, that's up to you, man. I mean, that's fine. But, but me as an AD, it was just like, there's been a couple of times I just pulled somebody off set. I'm like, listen, bro, there was it's funny you mentioned that. There was a indie TV pilot, indie sci-fi TV pilot that I was working on. It was in a warehouse. All the warehouse walls were painted green for, you know, CGI purposes, for green screen purposes. And then there was a lot of practical sets within. Yeah. But this guy was just talking shit. Like he just felt like fucking with the main actor. And the main actor was starting to get pissed. and I'm like, okay, dude, hey, come with me. I just set him somewhere else. And it was like in the farthest corner of the whole room. And half the time he wasn't shot. Half the time he was. And I still gave him direction. I was like, okay, we'll start off with this. I'll throw him in the farthest corner of the warehouse. I'll even give him some action. I'll even give him some direction, some extra direction to do, you know, as far as like when action's called. I kept him on the far side of the room. And the actor was starting to get pissed. So I had to pull him off to the side. And I said, listen, man, forget him. I got him handled. You know, there's no need to like take this, you know, above and beyond. But you're right. There's always some guy that's like, doesn't care.
It's weird, man.
It's weird. Yeah. It's weird. Yeah.
Somebody wants to see it. Somebody wants to burn it all down. You know, there's always somebody who wants to burn it all down. There's the dark night in every production. Yeah. It's just the way it is. I think in part it's because we're a bunch of people who don't really want to grow up. You know, I think if you're in film, you don't want to let go of fantasy land. You kind of want to live in an alternate reality. You want to create alternate realities. And, you know, somebody's child personality, right? Like their infantile side is not collaborative, and it's like kicking things and screaming and saying this sucks. And that's kind of how it shows up on set. Right. So you're always gonna. It's nobody but the people who've worked in this industry know what it's like, and that's a big part of it. It's dealing with infantile personalities because we're in a fantasy world, right? So that's it, man. What can you do? That's just part of our work, right? Yeah, and yeah, there's been a number of times where, like, there was another film I was AD on, and you know, one of the kid stars was just obnoxious, like would not stop. I had to pull his dad aside. I was like, listen, you know, we're about 75% done, but you gotta wrangle your kid, man, because if you don't, I'm gonna have to say something. Enough is enough. If you don't, I'm gonna have to say something, and I might hurt his feelings. You're his dad. You need to like handle your kid, you know. But yes, at the end of the day, yeah, you're right. There was another time where we had an extra, like, just sniffing through like hair and makeup stuff, or he was like, and then he like he demanded cash up front day of, and I was like, oh my god, like where do you? Yeah, what is going on? Sometimes you just got to kick them off set. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to kick people off the set. Yeah. You know, like you can get to that point with anyone. I've had to switch out editors, you know, 2 months into a project because they made the project too personal and they weren't listening to the client or the director, you know, or because they didn't agree with the music choices that the producer was asking for. But at the end of the day, it's like when people get too childish over this stuff, and we're in a creative world, you got to make some really sharp logistical decisions that take into account the project before the person, man. So it can be tough. You got to make those calls, man. It's like, all right, I'm sorry, you're not, it's not working out. Goodbye. Yeah, exactly. And it happens. And again, there was another AD gig I had. The key grip was demanding
the gaffer, you know, to do this, that, and the other thing, and demanding you listen to me. And I'm like, listen, I can go on Wikipedia right now, and you can go to I think it's Film Crew, and on Wikipedia it's listed in, I think, in seniority. And the key grip's the key grip's not going to boss around the gaffer. If the gaffer tells the key grip to do something, and it turned into a whole show. And I think the key grip was also leasing equipment to the production. I'm like, that's a totally different thing. We're using your equipment because we're paying for it. We rented it. You know, there was a contract for that. That's different. But you're also on set as a key grip. If the gaffer's telling you to do something, do it. I mean, is the gaffer being racist, sexist, bullying you, being out of line somehow, offensive in any way? Let me know. No, but if I tell him to do something, like, you don't tell him to do something, he tells you to do something. I mean, is it a safety issue? Are you telling the gaffer to do something for safety reasons? Well, no, but he just won't listen to me. He doesn't have to. Move on, you know, just do what he says, you know, things of that nature. So, I mean, yeah, it's a tricky business, man. There's a lot of egos, but I think right now with, after the Me Too, I love the Me Too movement. I love all the social, the Black Lives movement, the Me Too movement. People have started to shut the fuck up now with these egos. They started to quell that shit.
Yeah.
Before it was just egos. It was filmmakers making decisions based on maybe they'll get laid, and I'm like, bro, there was a number of partners I had to kick to the curb. They're like, I could tell all their decisions were based on if they're gonna, like, you know, bang one of the co-producers or bang one of the actresses, and I'm like, dude, we just gotta.
That was so standard even a few years ago, man.
Yeah. But when this Me Too, and I've noticed a drastic difference. Maybe because we're just in like this small little micro film industry here in the DMV. But I've been on set, and people are way different. People are very kind and understanding and collaborative, and you still have your onesies and twosies of douchebags and assholes, male and female. But I've noticed, you know, a drastic difference, you know, like there's not these wannabe Weinsteins. There's not these, you know, I don't know, but I mean, Weinstein's an extreme example, but just people treat each other.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
You don't have these frat guys, right?
Yeah.
Who are treating sets like frat houses.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. And that was pretty standard, right? Like there was something about this industry that allowed people in power to take advantage, right? And I think we are on the front lines of a lot of like the darker side of the American social fabric, right? Whether it be racism or sexism or like gender, especially gender inequality issues on set. And I think what we're seeing is not only like a reckoning, because there's a lot of artists involved, and you'll be called out for your shit. But also, I think younger generations bringing in a more evolved view of people, right? I think that's affected sets a lot. You know, like one of the things, man, that, you know, because I think you're from my generation, men used to always say, "Oh man, that's so gay."
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Yeah.
Like, "Oh man, that's so gay." That's like the gayest shit I ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
That was so common, I think, in our generation. And on a series I was on recently, one of the directors was my age, you know, kind of came up with where that was very common parlance. And he'd say that on set. And one day, the PA, who was like this super hardworking kid from LA, really sweet kid, just kind of scolded him. You know, he was like, "Look, man, you can't say that kind of stuff anymore. I know in your generation it might have been commonplace, and maybe you didn't even mean it in a derogatory, way, but it's just not, it's not allowed because there are people who find that to be derogatory and demeaning, and you can't do it, right?
Yeah.
So, and he learned his lesson.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of getting everybody on board, and it's definitely going to be better for all of us, I think.
Yeah, and it goes back to a point. Exactly. It goes back to a point that I've made on this podcast a number of times. And the most important thing is the film. If you got half your crew bouncing, if you got half your cast bouncing, you don't have a film. So you gotta turn all that crap off. You have to, oh man, she's hot. You know, I gotta get her in my film.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, is she talented? Is she gonna make the film work? Don't, you know, stop making decisions. Stop making decisions based on what you think you're going to pull off at the hotel room or the after party later that night, bro. The most important thing at the end of the day is the film. The best performance is the best crew, the most professional. Even more important than talent, I think, is professionalism. There's been a lot. We've heard all these horror stories. We've heard all these horror stories about directors and actors getting, getting to some fist fights on, some of these famous sets. All the nightmares with Apocalypse Now, all the nightmares with Three Kings, all the nightmares with The Shining. Maybe not The Shining. I think that was more like the director's, vision, kind of like mess with the cast. That was director tactics. But Three Kings, there was a fist fight. What did I just said something else.
What was the fist fight? What was the fist fight in Three Kings?
The director and I think George Clooney got into a fist fight over disagreements with this is like this is the scene, and he goes, no, and I think Clooney was trying to like change something up, and I think it happened more than one time, and I think 3 strikes you're out. Like the director just started yelling at him, and Clooney like bowed up to him, and they both I think they started I don't know. Unfortunately for the gossip reasons, there's no footage, no behind the scenes footage of it. But I think there was a fist fight. I think I don't know who hit who. I don't know if it was I don't know if it was really just like a scuffle. Like they both got in each other's headlocks and were like, let me go, or if it was a straight up, they were both punching each other. I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch of stories of it, on YouTube, but it's like, with Apocalypse Now, he was just so impossible to deal with. And Martin, not Martin. Oh my God, what the hell? With the Godfather. That's what I forgot.
Yeah, I'm blanking on him too, but I know who you're talking.
Oh my
about.
God, dude! You have got to be. He's got to be kidding me. He's iconic. He's one of the greatest actors of all time. What?
Yeah, I know. I'm the Tango, last Tango in Paris.
Dear God, are you kidding me?
Yeah, man, this is so embarrassing.
This is embarrassing.
Because he's in the lineage of Humphrey Bogart. So it's Humphrey Bogart and then him.
Yes. Marlon Brando. Jesus.
Yeah. Marlon Brando.
So Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. We should be ashamed. All right, that's the end of the podcast. I'm just going to cancel this whole podcast too. But anyway.
Yeah, that's some painful shit.
but yeah, Marlon Brando is one of the greatest actors of all time, and he was just absolutely impossible to deal with on Apocalypse Now. The director got to the point he was yelling at him, and he would walk off. The director was like, "Just keep rolling." The second he starts walking on set, roll camera. And he used it, and it made that character from Apocalypse Now even more insane, even more unpredictable, because in real life he was, right. And it was almost like life imitates art, imitates life. But yeah, he was. That
was Coppola.
And that was Coppola on Apocalypse Now. But geez, where's the movie?
Yeah, I totally look. I just came out of shooting a week, so I got invited to help produce a film, and from the second I showed up, the director was just giving me shade, wouldn't let me do my job. I don't know what his issue was. I wanted to knock the guy out, really, because I flew, I flew across a continent. I ended up on this set, risked everything during COVID, and then I got this guy who hired me essentially just torturing me on set, right? So what? Sorry, there's a helicopter flying above.
It's
So
all right.
what were my two choices? My two choices were I either throw a hissy fit or really confront this guy in front of a crew, or I just do my job and wait till the right time to talk to this person. And that's what I did. You know, after years of film, you realize it's not about this dude, it's about the project. What if the guy funding this project is putting up his house for this? Or what if the guy funding this project sees this as a last ditch effort at making his dreams come true, or whatever? There's people that you don't see who have a lot of stakes in every project, right? So I was thinking of them. And yeah, I grinned and bared it. It was a week of just really, really unpleasant times on set. You know, I was hired as a producer and as a DP, and it was in crazy hot location in the desert, the kind of place where you need people to be really collaborative, you know?
Yeah.
And this guy was anything but. But dude, I kept my cool. I thought about the project, and at the very end, when everything was filmed, where everything was on hard drives, right? When we were on our way home, I was able to let him know what I thought. And I told him what I thought, not because I wanted to hurt his feelings, but because, you know, if the project was going to be successful, it needed a shift in perception, a shift in working styles.
Yeah.
And I think that to me was important that I did that, because if you can't do that, then you're not a professional on set, and you're not helping move things forward, because you're always going to find conflicts with other people. There's just too many personalities, and there's always going to be somebody who wants to burn shit down. There's always going to be somebody who wants to burn you down.
Yeah.
Right. And you just kind of have to be really smart and strategic and play chess with this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, we mentioned Me Too, and we, you know, there's the Me Too movement, there's the Black Lives Matter, there's the social injustice, there's the, you know, equality, this major, massive equality movement, at least here in the States. And you're right. There's still, we see it even with, you know, like a shitload of, you know, factions and groups throughout the States that are pushing that back. You know, these Proud Boys, these good old boys, these, you know, these extremely right-wing, conservatives that just won't accept you know, the you know, a new way of thinking, and a more open way of thinking, and a more honest and welcoming, and there's always going to be that one person. But for me, you know, and I get your position, but for me it's like, okay, am I getting paid well? And this guy is essentially paying me well and making my job real fucking easy. You don't want to listen to me. You don't want to do what I say. I'm just going to chill. I'm going to do even less, and I'm going to get paid well.
Right.
I'm either going to work hard or not work hard. I'm still going to get that check. And again, like you said, but like you said, the most important thing is the film. And then you know, of course there's always this thing that I think of, like, still, what's in it for me? I'm not going to, like, is it a great script and is it a fun set, but I'm only getting paid so much a day, but I might do more, but this guy's paying me a lot, making my job real difficult, shoot me down anyway. So I'll make it real simple for myself. But still, the film is the most important thing. And so, yeah, I mean, I think your route was like, okay, wait till principal wrap, and then, you know, rip him a new one, or at least, you know, you didn't rip him a new one. You were just honest with him. You just, you know, confronted him and said, hey, listen, what the hell happened? You hired me.
I mean, I had a few words. Yeah. I mean, I had a few words. I mean, I think that's another lesson you got to learn is there's always going to be people who try to strong arm or push around or use power. And I think we've learned, like, through the Me Too movement, that, you know, you'll be called out for that shit. So I think it's important to confront people who are misusing their power, but I think there's ways of doing it, you know? And like the instinct is to do it right on set, right in the moment you feel angry, right? And blow everything up. I think a true professional can navigate that in a more intelligent way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And know that this is not the director, it's not always the director's project even, they're just directing. It's just another, or the producer, you know? There's always like a lot more people involved in a project than just the people who tend to have leadership positions on set. So I think there's smart ways to approaching it, which doesn't mean you should ever let anybody tread on you, right? Or be demeaning or in some way disparage your work or make you miserable because they're in a position of power. I'm not saying that ever. And that goes for PAs, that goes for everybody on set. Like, you should never just take it because you want to make it in this industry, but just do it in a smart way, you know? Do it in a smart way where you don't end up being seen as the crazy one, right?
Right. Yeah. I got to agree with you, like the smart way mentality. I mean, there's been times where I spoke up and someone, you know, going back to like, oh man, that shit's gay. And so kind of working with the person's mentality. He thinks he's a tough guy. He's a frat bro. And, you know, me and a couple other dudes, there's been a number of situations like that on a set or elsewhere. And we would just look at them like, whoa, you know, like Guidos from New York that are progressive and open-minded, like, whoa, you can't do that, bro. You can't say that, bro. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, can't do that, man. You come up with something new. You can't do that. But it's kind of like reinventing that Guido bro mentality, that frat, what's the juice head, you know, the juice head army guy that's but with a heart of gold. Whoa, you can't say that, bro. You can't, don't do that. Don't do that.
Right.
They're like, okay, you're right.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. So okay, that shit's whack. Like, that's good. Well, I like that. That shit's whack. That shit's whack. You know, it's not, you know, and because again, you don't want to like just call this guy out and truly embarrass him on set, but kind of like a slick way to do. A slick way to do is make a joke out of it, kind of in front of everybody, so everybody hears that this is being corrected and stopped. We're like, whoa, bro, you can't. That's not cool. And they're like, what? I'm like, okay, just say that shit's whack or something, you know, whatever. But in such a way that people hear it, but you're not like, you can't say that, sir. I'm gonna end your career right here now. And then that's not gonna help. But if you kind of like make a joke out of it and you kind of like emulate that bro mentality, that kind of like that Gen X, what were that Generation X tough guy, frat bro mentality type of thing, but in such a way that he'll appreciate it, and it's brought up in kind of a light, humorous way, but the correction's still made. And everybody still hears that and recognizes, okay, the situation has been handled. The situation's been corrected. That person's not going to make a complaint yet. That person's not going to make a complaint yet. If it happens 2 or 3 more times, then it's like, okay, pull this guy out to the side. I'm like, dude, stop fucking saying that shit. We're going to have a problem. You know, you're going to piss some people off. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what's next on the agenda for Emiliano? What's next set of goals and next projects, but what's next on the agenda for, say, the next 6 months to a year?
Yeah, man. So it's development work right now. I'm still figuring that out. You know, because this is a period where there's a lot of things running through my mind. Obviously, the film industry hasn't self-corrected fully. A lot of the stuff I had planned it just can't happen.
Yeah.
We don't know how long we're going to be in the situation. So I'm figuring it out. You know, I'm kind of exploring the possibilities. I'm trying to make scripts. I'm trying to make short films. I might take other types of jobs. I don't know. What I know is that at some point, um, we'll all be making films again, and in the meanwhile, we got to do what we can. So I think I'm going back to some of these wild places that I have access to, and I'm going to try to see how humans being stuck at home is affecting wildlife. You know, because that's my meditation, that's my safe place, that's my zone right now. And there's not any people there. You know,
Yep.
as far as I know, you know, it's a safe place. So that's it, man. You know, try to really get creative with what you have. And I think scripts is something a lot of people are going to. A lot of people who have that inclination to write, who like reading scripts, who've always wanted to write their own script. I think this is a great period to do that. So I'm working on a script also. So 3 hours a day, you know, if you're not a pro writer, it's tough.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And you know, I had a previous guest who sold a book. Well, he's an author and a screenwriter, and his best advice to me, and this is very, very distinct towards screenwriters, is write a novelization version of it first. And you can self-sell. You can sell your own book on Amazon. So write a novel version of that, you know, that Stephen King version, or that who's the other one? You know, that James Patterson version, or that Stephen King version of your movie. You write it in a novel version first, sell it on eBay, sell it on Amazon as an ebook. Because anybody right now with a laptop can sell their book as an ebook on Kindle on Amazon. And if that book does well, there's your pitch. You don't have to even have a fucking pitch. You know, you have both your novel version. You have your novel version, and you have your screenplay version, and that screenplay sitting on that folder on your laptop, and your book starts selling. Your book starts selling on Kindle on Amazon, and it's like, hey, listen, I just sold. You know, I just did #2 on Amazon last week. Let's make it a movie. Right. Oh, really? That's your pitch. You know, because you don't even have to fucking pitch Stephen King books. You don't even have to. Okay. Right. You just came out with a book, screenplay, movie. It's that simple. It's not that simple, but
I love it. That's great advice.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of projects that I'm considering doing that. But like I said, but we were talking offline, and I've mentioned this on my podcast before. I thought I was going to have so much time during this quarantine, you know, doing a podcast and doing some corporate live virtual events for, you know, some corporations, some live virtual conferences. And I've never been more busier in my life. Ever since this kid could start crawling, it's like, oh Christ, we got to take him to daycare. And then, oh gosh. So, but yeah, there's a number of things that I want to novelize first and see if I can sell and do it that way through, you know, Amazon Kindle as an ebook. But there's a bunch of scripts. I mean, I guess
get to writing. Why not, man?
Yeah.
Why not? You just get the writing exercise is good enough on its own, you know.
And I love writing, and I love sitting here on the laptop and writing and coming up. You know, I've got 2 web series that are completely written, shot listed, and broken down just in notes. I don't even bother using Final Draft. It's all on notes on a Mac. And that's how it's completely written, because the show's produced just like those ID crime shows, but they're about supervillains. And so I first start off with the way those shows are produced is they interview, you know, the criminologists and the experts and the reporters and the detectives on this case, and then maybe even, you know, victims or family of victims, and they just interview those people. Tell us what happened when tell us about the case with the I just watched something, but when, you know, when you know, Joe Schmo, you know, murdered his wife and kidnapped his kids. And so they shoot these interviews, then they transcribe it all, and then they take that transcripts and they throw it into, you know, I think Microsoft Word or something, and they come out with an outline. It's not like a final draft script. It's not like a screenplay script for these episodes. It's outlines based on the transcripts from these interviews of these detectives or family of victims or whatever the case. And so I kind of jumped the gun, and I did a bunch of research on, say, you know, the Joker, and I plotted it out as a teleprompter script. And so
Right.
I have a couple actors against a green screen. One plays Clark Kent, but Clark Kent is a reporter at Daily Planet, so he's going to read that teleprompter. I already have that script. It starts off in teleprompter script, and then I take that, I copy and paste that in the notes. Well, that's already in the notes. Then I copy and paste it into another note in notes, and I hit the checklist button. Boom, shot list. But I might delete a bunch of these because it's not really like a shot list worthy sentence. It's more of a dialogue sentence. And so then let's say I had 40 sentences. Let's say I had 40 sentences in that teleprompter script. I might get rid of 10. So that's like 30 scenes, or maybe just 30 shots that I want to use as the dramatic reenactment. Or I might have, you know, panels from the comics that I use as forensic sketches. And so all this is kind of flipped into that crime show that you might see on ID or whatever. But that's produced totally differently. Now I have 3 feature-length scripts that I would love to shop around. I might just have to copy and paste all that into Microsoft Word, re-edit it and novelize it. This cool little, you know, 150.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. This cool little 150-page short story I read on Kindle. It's like sci-fi, horror, fantasy, and it sells and it does all right. Then it's like, okay, I have a script. The book did well. You know, there's a million different hacks, and I'm open. Yeah. I'm so open to like all these different production hacks. I was just thinking about it last night. I was just thinking about it last night. There was a production hack that somebody did, and I'm not saying steal the idea, but what I'm inspired is how people think outside the box. And so, you know, with Blair Witch, they wanted to make a horror film. They only got $60,000 to do it with. Well, here's a cool idea. Do it like a documentary team got lost in the woods and police found the footage. They entirely created the found footage film, but they thought outside the box. Here's a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I could even say that they stole the idea from, Blair Witch stole the idea from This Is Spinal Tap, because This Is Spinal Tap, they found a cheap way to make this fake comedy biopic about a fictional rock band, but they did it in a documentary style. They were, and so production costs
Mm-hmm.
went way down. Instead of doing like all these grand, they just had a camera rolling. And what you might think is outtakes is what they kept in this documentary of the group Spinal Tap. And then, which led into Blair Witch mockumentaries, which led into Blair Witch. And there was a mockumentary somewhere between Blair Witch and there was another mockumentary that was kind of successful. But anyway, it's just thinking outside the box. Okay, let's do a mockumentary on a horror movie. That's all it was a mockumentary, which turned into like a whole subgenre of horror called the found footage horror film. So, but it's just
it's a time to be malleable, time to shape shift, time to figure out, you know, different possibilities. I think we're all on that boat, you know, and you just keep throwing everything you have at the possibility of making that film you really want to make, you know.
Yeah, well, you kind of touched upon it, but is there a last bit of advice or last point you'd want to make to our viewers?
No, I would say, you know, just stick to whatever idea, I think at some point you've got to stop taking work just to take work in terms of film. Of course, you have to survive, right? And that's the main thing. But at some point, you have to figure out what it is that you really, really want to do. Why did you get into film, right? And you've got to go after that thing, because otherwise you're just procrastinating, and you're not gonna get to the place where you want to get by procrastinating. So at some point, you're gonna have to take that risk of completely failing, but you're gonna have to go after that thing that you've been wanting to go after, and that's my advice.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I mean, you have to go after it, and you got to stick to your guns. Are you still there? Did I lose you again? Oh, there you are.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to stick to your guns, and you have to go after it, and you got to pull that trigger. And that's a big thing that I've been talking about. Now, to touch upon that, you know, I know a lot of guys that just spend way too much time editing, re-editing, trying to make this thing perfect, But it's like, bro, you got to pull the trigger on it. You got to pull the trigger on you doing, like, of course, we all got to survive. You got to pull the trigger on you doing what you want to do. But at the same time, you got to put something out there. And, you know, you could spend hours and hours, days, weeks, months editing this thing. But at some point, that thing's got to be a thing out there. You know, you can't sit here for like 5, 6, 10 years editing the same documentary. I got a former colleague that just spent years editing a documentary, and it's like, bro, you gotta put you gotta put it out there, man. It's what's taking so long? Do you need to find somebody else to edit it? No, I'm editing it. Well, hurry up. I mean, it's like, we shot this thing 5, 6 years ago. What's the holdup? So any last socials, links, plugs you want to put out there?
No, I mean, you can check my Instagram, EMILIANO RUPRAH. That's where I put a lot of pictures and stories from my travels, or my websites, EMILIANOexplorer.com or screwupproductions.com, where you can see a lot of kind of the behind the scenes stuff from my latest films and trips. If you're interested in kind of wildlife filmmaking, what it looks like behind the scenes, and kind of what some of the crazy challenges are in filming animals in the wild, or filming in conflict zones or anything like that.
Yeah, and I'll show this one again. The Nomads, aka Nomads, and you mentioned that was about
that's about 12 different migrating species who come to Mexico every year. Everything from gray whales to what you see, flamingos and butterflies, bats. It's kind of the whole gamut of species that of great iconic species that make this crazy journey to Mexico during the winter and summer months.
Yep. Awesome. Well, you heard it here. Emiliano, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. And this is our first episode, if you don't mind me doing a plug, Landon's Mafia. So my wife's best friend, Shelly, her nephew has sarcoma NOS, not otherwise specified sarcoma. And I think he's in his 3rd remission. So links in the description below, not only to Emiliano's links and websites and Instagrams, but to Landon's Mafia. You can donate to his GoFundMe. So this is a quick plug for Landon, a close friend's nephew. I think he's in his 3rd remission, so it keeps coming back, but he keeps fighting. So couple other websites in there. You can donate on GoFundMe. You can donate through Venmo. There's a special name and code and link and all that stuff for Landon. So that to my viewers, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Emiliano. I can't thank you enough. Learned a lot. It was great talking to you. I don't even think we touched upon all 6 of my general points, because we were just so balls deep in, you know, some horror stories and some success stories. And
yeah,
so,
man, no, it's an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you for having me. And to your audience, please go to Landon's Mafia websites before. I mean, don't even consider going to mine. Please go to Landon's Mafia websites and help out. And yeah, man, Glenn, great talking to you. Hope to talk to you again soon.
But of
Take
course,
care,
not.
man.
But not to take away from Emiliano's work. His links are in the description below, so definitely check out his work as well. But yeah, this is just something I started recently. We're definitely pushing for Landon. But yeah, again, Emiliano, I can't thank you enough for coming on. To my viewers, I hope I've earned the privilege and the time of your privilege of your time and viewership. I know my guest has. And until next time, you know what to do.
Cheers, man. Take care.